So this last Saturday, I saw The Invisible Man from 2020, directed by Leigh Whannell, starring Elizabeth Moss and a suspiciously framed area of empty space. Right out of the gate. Yes, this is the kind of film where pretty much everyone knows what the score is going in. Much was made of spoilers in the trailer, per usual. But to be fair, The Invisible Man has been an iconic character in sci-fi horror ever since H.G. Wells introduced him over 120 years ago, in serialized form in the British periodical Pearson's Weekly. The presence of a man and his visibility or lack thereof is therefore not really up for speculation. That being said, I would recommend going in as blind as you can, because overall this is an excellent horror thriller from a writer-director at the top of his craft. First off, the cinematography immediately stands out by doing little at all. The film has been sold on it, and for good reason. Whannell masterfully creates tension out of empty space. Scene by scene, you're hit with the opposite of jump scares, essentially. Moments where knowing that something won't suddenly leap into view at you is the most terrifying proposition. It's almost evocative of a classier, more purposeful paranormal activity at times, and how the camera lingers on static shots of long hallways and empty corners or doors. Or to acknowledge another recent horror classic, It Follows, where the background itself becomes menacing. You will fear unoccupied chairs after watching this movie. You will chill at the sight of vacant breakfast nooks. On the note of the invisibility effects in particular, there's some great and some odd. We still can't quite do CGI cold breath. But on the whole, it's outstanding, and the ultimate effect is seeing nothing at all. Some people will mime getting hit, and Foley work or off-screen action will handle the rest, or an object will presumably move around on the tried and true fishing line or its digital equivalent. It's a producer's dream, really. Invisibility can be played for laughs, scares, or a little of both. Contrast this, for example, with the translucent character in Amazon's adaptation of The Boys, whose perversion and powers are played there for dark comedy and slapstick. Here, though, paranoia is the name of the game. There's little bombast in how the Invisible Man moves throughout the story, just a slow, concerted dive into that well of universal fear that is being surveilled, pursued, and possibly bested by something or someone totally unseen. Benjamin Wallfisch, who also scored the underrated gonzo fantasy horror epic A Cure for Wellness, kills it with an appropriately paranoid score. The music alternates between sparse, ominous pulsations and frenetic pounding notes in moments of pure panic. And of course, moments of total silence, which often sell the mood better than any background track ever could. So a little about the actual plot before I go into spoilery territory. Elizabeth Moss plays Cecilia, the reluctant girlfriend of an acclaimed optics scientist named Adrian Griffin, who lives in a huge fancy beach compound outside San Francisco. We see Cecilia trying to make a break for it in the night. From her stealth and efficiency as she leaves the bed, it's been clear that this guy, who is currently visible, is controlling and a man to be feared, and that she's been planning this for a long time. Seeing that she had to drug him with diazepam first doesn't hurt either. Great set design, it should be mentioned. The beach house has a real cold, opulent, yet inhospitable vibe with a lot of wide open spaces that suit Griffin's figurative and literal emptiness to come. She passes through a high-tech lab where some of Griffin's mysterious work seems to be in development, and eventually succeeds in fleeing the property, although not before triggering an alarm when she tries to rescue her dog. Cecilia's sister rescues her, right as Griffin bursts out of the forest to throw himself against the car. Some weeks later, Cecilia is staying with a cop friend, James, at her sister's house. She's still fearful and even downright agoraphobic after escaping Griffin, so she's shocked when her sister tells her that Griffin has apparently killed himself. Shortly afterwards, Cecilia receives notice that she's named in a trust Griffin set up. As Griffin's attorney brother Tom explains, she gets $5 million in installments over the years to come, so long as she doesn't commit any crimes. With this news, Cecilia and her friends are overjoyed. But at times when she's alone, she still swears she can sense some kind of presence, and things start disappearing or moving around that she can't quite account for. Is she going mad from post-traumatic stress, or has Griffin indeed used his scientific expertise to find a way to stalk her while invisible? Yes, he has. The answer is yes. The film makes little to no pretense that Griffin isn't A, alive, and B, an invisible dude. And that's very much to its benefit. The film takes the base premise and some character names from the original story and reshapes them into a more personal, allegorical tale about abusive relationships and the way that society can often treat female victims of domestic abuse and gaslighting. In prior adaptations, including Paul Verhoeven's scuzzy spiritual adaptation Hollow Man, The predatory nature of the Invisible Man has been more akin to an all-purpose mad scientist or a serial killer. Here, however, Griffin is the needy ex from hell brought to a single-minded supernatural extreme. The torture he inflicts on his lone primary victim is more psychosocial than physical, but all the more disturbing for it. The focus is not just on him carving through a bunch of dead meats, but on him and her, and how this bizarre torment ironically focuses her to face the hell that he's put her through like never before. Griffin is a manipulative psychopath, and while he may not literally be a ghost, he essentially haunts this woman, slowly but surely, trying to break down her confidence, isolate her from family and friends, and frame her as a dangerous lunatic. To the role of that woman, Moss brings a practiced and fittingly vulnerable yet empowered delirium, well-tuned in her time on The Handmaid's Tale. But both her performance and character transcend mere victim status. She's scared, as anyone would be under the circumstances, but also determined and resourceful. When she's left, as she suspects, not alone for the first time, she grabs a knife and starts spreading coffee grounds on the floor to track his footsteps. Her toxic relationship with Griffin influences their interactions and decisions, but it doesn't define her or limit her character, and that's so critical to see for what could have otherwise been a disposable Scream Queen role. In between her headlining a relatively small cast and an empowered performance, Moss very much comes out as the visible woman by contrast. There's some definite stylistic carryovers and homages to Whannell's other films throughout. Griffin's lab is only on screen briefly, but it has a very meticulous jigsaw-esque puzzle room layout to it, albeit with a bit more of a spit shine, with cameras watching his property and at least one mysterious device prominently displayed. You also see, real quick, some graffiti of Jigsaw right before a car chase near the climax of the movie. The scene where Griffin is taking out cops in the hospital a la Terminator has some very Upgrade-esque dynamic camera work, although with somewhat more rudimentary choreography. Oh, and the robot sneeze guy from Upgrade has a cameo. When Cecilia goes into the hospital after passing out, there's a shot of a patient with his face completely covered in bandages, and you cannot tell me that that was not an OG Invisible Man Easter egg. So it's got a pretty solid script overall, but there's definitely some plot holes, or at least some points where the accurate implication that Griffin is lying relies on him apparently thinking that everyone except him is an idiot, which he's a genius sociopath, so that's possible, but it comes across more like naive and narratively convenient. So if Tom had really orchestrated the whole thing and kidnapped Griffin like Griffin wants Cecilia to think, then why? What would be his motivation? Also being obsessed with Cecilia? Wanting to get rich off of the suit tech? If he's such a smooth talker, then why wouldn't Griffin have said anything after the fact to try to intimate that? Be like, oh yeah, my brother was obsessed with you and jealous of my wealth, that's why he did all that. How would Tom hide the fact that Griffin was still alive? Did no one ask about seeing a body or getting a death certificate before the news started reporting on it? Where and why would Tom have known to get that bloody pill bottle? Unless both Griffins are media puppet masters as well as a big shot attorney and a scientist, it just doesn't make sense, even as a blatant lie that you aren't supposed to think about. Cecilia is an architect, a classic film profession, taking after George Costanza. The idea of replacing the invisibility potion or serum with a high-tech suit is pretty inspired. The look of it isn't anything too unique, but it's immediately memorable, with some great trypophobia-inducing tiny eye cameras all over it and a featureless head. And when the suit gets damaged during the third act, the half-visible man is honestly even scarier. However, this technology lends itself to a few, not plot holes, but just in-universe questions that aren't readily answered. He rarely speaks while in the suit, which helps with the tension. I have to wonder how many of those scenes in the suit were just with a body double. That being said, does he breathe in that thing? James's daughter maces him in the face, the suit gets, sprayed in the face, and the guy recoils. So is it porous? Wouldn't your joints popping give you away? Is he not always just crushing the cameras that are on his feet when he walks? What about creaky floorboards? What if he farts? I just kind of have to imagine him popping all of his knuckles before going out for the night, like... Is the suit form-fitting? How could it be and still be as precise as it is? Griffin and Tom are brothers, so they might cut a similar figure, but while I very much hoped for and eventually enjoyed seeing, or rather not seeing, Cecilia wear a suit too, I don't see how it's adjusting to those other proportions. It's not like full-body yoga pants. Also, you're telling me this guy made 2 of these suits and he doesn't think to keep the other one under much tighter lock and key? It seems like he's going back to the property at some point, and there's cameras all over the house. So I get that she hides one in the closet and then grabs it later, which makes for that great ending, kill, revenge, twist, whatever. But keep a closer eye on that thing. There's a rain scene near the climax of the movie that I thought would get more attention than it did, but the Invisible Man actually isn't in it for long. At least not while fully invisible. Subversion of expectations, perhaps? Cecilia insults Griffin's brother by calling him a jellyfish at one point, and then later James's daughter has a jellyfish on her shirt. Symbolism? Because you can see right through them and they're both toxic? Ooh. Also, I guess chairs aren't that scary when there's no butt impressions. Unless he's got really great calves and he's just squatting. Oh, shit. Overall, I'd give this one an 8 out of 10. While peppered with a few irksome plot contrivances, it employs many twists to the original story which demonstrate the right way to take an old idea and retool it for a new era and style. It's not too scandalous, and it relies just as much, if not more, on psychological thrills and audio-visual tension than gore, which makes up for its fairly predictable first half. If you like horror, sci-fi, or psychological thrillers, or just enjoyed Leigh Whannell and Elisabeth Moss's previous work, definitely pop on a pair of dark sunglasses and see this one. Just make sure that the seat next to you at the theater is in fact unoccupied before you put your bag down.